1974, the most destructive tornado outbreak in recorded history hits the U.S. 148 tornadoes ripped through 13 states, causing millions of dollars in damage. Weather forecasters are unable to predict where or when the twisters will strike. More than 5,000 people are injured. 330 are dead. The nation is in shock.
I've never seen anything like it, and I don't want to again.
A team of meteorologists investigate the aftermath to provide forecasters with new tools to save lives in the future. Disasters don't just happen. They're triggered by a chain of critical events. Unravel the clues and count down those final seconds from disaster. The United States, Missouri, Kansas City, April 3rd, 1974. Meteorologists are extremely concerned. Radar screens at the Storm Forecast Center indicate that America's heartland is about to be struck by a massive tornado outbreak. Twisters hit every country on the planet, but the United States is struck the most, with 1,000 each year. The majority of these are small, and they affect the land between the Rockies and the Appalachians, named Tornado Alley. The radar shows signs of a very powerful storm brewing. Dry winds move inland from the Pacific Ocean and collide with humid air heading north from the Gulf of Mexico. These are perfect conditions for thunderstorms. However, winds in the upper atmosphere limit thunderstorms from developing, creating unstable atmospheric conditions across a wide area. Meteorologists study their radar scope for the first signs of tornado activity. They've seen this kind of development before. On Palm Sunday, 1965, 48 tornadoes left a trail of destruction 470 miles long. The violent storms lasted 12 hours, devastating towns across Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana.
Here, the death toll was the greatest. Entire families wiped out.
In total, 1,500 people were injured. 271 died. The Palm Sunday tragedy exposed the Weather Service's inability to precisely predict where the tornadoes would strike. Their basic radar revealed where the storms would develop, but there was insufficient data to know which storms would be destructive and which would dissipate without harm. Nearly 10 years after the Palm Sunday outbreak, tornado prediction has barely improved. One of thousands of cities in the Midwest is Xenia, Ohio. 12:45 p.m. At Xenia High School, Julie Smith is eating lunch with her friends. They discuss rehearsals for the school play, unaware that bad weather is approaching. Julie's lived in Xenia since she was 7 years old.
It was great. There was one movie theater in town. That's where we all went on dates. There was one drive-in theater, you know, that the high school had dances. It was straight out of a postcard. I mean, it really was.
"15 miles from Xenia in Dayton, Ohio, Lucille Lehman is an office administrator at an electronics company. She's distracted by thoughts of her daughter Cecilia, who is recovering from a spinal operation. Cecilia passes the time at home making dinner.
She always had lots of friends, always had friends, you know. She was very talented. She was in theater, and I thought she was going to be my little movie star someday.
By 2 p.m., meteorologists at the Storm Forecast Center are increasingly alarmed by the developing weather. Afraid of repeating the mistakes of the Palm Sunday outbreak, they issue tornado warnings to television and radio stations across the central U.S. These warnings often go ignored, but without specific information, it's the best they can do.
The severe thunderstorm warning has been changed to a tornado warning.
3:20 p.m. Lucille Lehman is on her way home from work to see her kids.
You've got the tornado sighted there.
As she flips through the channels on her radio, she hears a warning that tornadoes are expected in the area.
He is about to leave the weather service. I understand you've got the tornado sighted there.
She hurries home as quickly as possible.
Good gracious sakes alive.
By 3:30, the bad weather is intensifying. More than 20 twisters have been spotted across Tornado Alley, but so far, none of them have struck a city. Then, a massive twister appears on the outskirts of Xenia. Despite the general weather warnings, thousands of people in the city are unaware of the impending disaster. A tornado spotter sees it and radios it in to the weather service.
Yeah, we just had a tornado touchdown outside of town on Interstate 55. You copy that?
Hi, how can I help you?
At the Storm Forecast Center, the news spreads.
Hold on. Touchdown in Xenia. That's heading straight for the center of town.
For the 25,000 people of Xenia, a tornado strike is no longer just a possibility. It's a reality. April 3rd, 1974. Meteorologists at the Storm Forecast Center track Tornado Alley as it's struck by the worst outbreak of twisters in U.S. history. They're unable to predict the severity of each tornado or which towns will be hit. 3:32 p.m. In Xenia, Ohio, a tornado has just touched down and heads straight for the center of the city. At Xenia High, 2,000 kids have finished school for the day. But Julie Smith and 11 other teenagers in the drama group are rehearsing a play in the auditorium. Meanwhile, Julie's father, Albert, is on his way to pick up his daughter from rehearsal. He's unaware that a tornado is heading straight for the school. Suddenly, Julie's friend Ruth bursts into the auditorium.
See, there you go. Guess what? There's a tornado! Yeah.
Excited, the teenagers run to see the twister.
It is!
In my mind, I pictured the Wizard of Oz, you know. Oh, this little itty-bitty thing that we could go look at.
But as the tornado approaches the school, they're quickly overwhelmed by the sheer size of it.
I remember thinking I was surprised there was no funnel. You know, no little itty-bitty thing.
The students are frozen with fear.
I think we were all shocked at what we saw. This huge thing that we couldn't even see the ends of it, coming right at us. It sounded like something evil. And I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm going to die this way. I'm going to die in a tornado.
3:45 p.m. The Xenia tornado continues its trail of destruction. Lucille Lehman and her 4 children are directly in its path. Following government advice, Lucille opens the windows, hoping to save the house from destruction. As the family looks in awe at the approaching twister, they're engulfed by the powerful winds. "4 p.m. The tornado passes through the city and heads northeast into the countryside. Xenia is completely destroyed. Hundreds of people are injured. Back at the school, 12 teenagers are in shock, covered in cuts from flying debris. One of them is Julie Smith.
I remember thinking how lucky I was to be alive, and I wondered how many people had died.
33 people are dead, while many others lie trapped under collapsed buildings. Lucille Lehman's house took a direct hit and is totally destroyed. Her son Joe was thrown from the house and is in shock. His mother and 3 sisters lie trapped in the remains. Cecilia is pinned under the crushing weight of a water heater. Neighbors pull Joe's sister Stephanie from the wreckage. Shortly after, they rescue his other sister, Denise. As Lucille frees herself, she's overwhelmed by the devastation.
You know, everything around me was level.
She tries to help her daughter, Cecilia, who's still trapped.
I could move my hands, but my lower half of my body was pinned. My legs felt numb.
The roads are impassable, and there's no sign of medical help. So neighbors must rescue Cecilia on their own. Luckily, Julie's father, Albert, missed the tornado strike. But as he enters Xenia, he sees a destroyed city. His daughter is somewhere in the debris, and he has no idea if she is dead or alive. In the wreckage of what was once the Lehman house, neighbors are able to finally free Cecilia from the rubble.
Once I could feel the weight of things being removed, I knew I was going to be okay. I just remember lying there, being grateful that I'm alive, being thankful to the people that dug me out.
"4:43 p.m. 42 twisters have ripped across Tornado Alley, and reports continue to flood in. Meteorologists have never witnessed anything on this scale before. And what's worse, there seems to be no end in sight. Tornado Alley is being hit by the worst twister outbreak in recorded history. As the massive tornadoes wreak death and destruction, meteorologists are powerless to predict where and when they will strike next. 4:47 p.m. On the outskirts of Monticello, Indiana, another monster tornado forms. As the twister rips through farmland, Donald Richards is making his way home with his church group. They've spent a week touring historical sites and are exhausted. Karen Stotts remembers the trip well.
We had gone to soak up church history, and that was the last day of our trip. We'd been there a couple of days, and it was time to come home.
5:05 p.m. The enormous tornado tears through the Indiana countryside, gaining power. Inside the van, Donald and the 5 girls are unaware that the twister is directly behind them. It races towards them, building in strength and speed. As they start to cross the Tippecanoe River, the twister strikes. It picks up the van and tosses it over 50 feet into the river below. When it hits the water, it sinks.
When the bus went down, I saw 2 people, my teacher and my friend. I never saw anybody else. I don't know where they were.
Karen's friends are seriously injured.
They were unable to get away. They were not able to fight for themselves.
As the van sinks deeper into the river, Karen manages to escape. Struggling against the winds, she finds the strength to swim to shore.
I had to fight very hard to survive, and my drive to survive was extremely strong. And I just began swimming as hard as I could. I truly saw my life go right before my eyes, but I somehow, by the grace of God, did not die. So.
As the tornado continues to move across open country, Karen finally reaches the riverbank. She's exhausted, but alive. Her friends aren't as lucky. In Xenia, Albert finally reaches the high school and discovers it's totally destroyed.
I'm just gonna take a quick look.
Here, sir.
How do you know that?
But they're not here, sir.
He's told there are no survivors.
Go home. Call somebody.
Albert is grief-stricken and drives aimlessly through the devastated city.
Julie!
He can't believe his daughter is dead.
Julie!
Suddenly, he sees a familiar figure. It's Julie.
Julie! Are you okay? Honey.
I'll never forget the look on his face. I'll never forget him crying, and I'll never forget him giving me that hug.
The violent storms continue until 5 a.m. In total, 148 twisters rip through Tornado Alley. Property damage is estimated to be over $600 million, the equivalent of $2.3 billion today. More than 5,000 people are injured. 330 are dead. President Nixon visits Xenia to support the shattered community. He visits the wrecked school where Julie Smith and the drama group were lucky to survive. As communities across the U.S. reel in shock, the Army and Air Force clean up thousands of smashed homes. Once again, the Weather Service's inability to accurately predict tornado strikes has resulted in tragedy. Now, By going deep into the scientific investigation, we can reveal how the 1974 outbreak changed tornado forecasting forever. The day after the Twister tragedy, Dr. Ted Fujita heads to work at the University of Chicago. The storm could provide him with a unique opportunity. An investigation into the outbreak could save lives in the future.
Unbelievable, unprecedented, never before. This happened. Has anybody seen the This was documentation.
At the university, Fujita explains his radical plan to his students and staff. If his hunch is right, they could learn more about tornadoes in the next few days than meteorology has learned in decades. Greg Forbes is Fujita's protege.
Even at that time, Dr. Fujita had the reputation of being Mr. Tornado. If there was any one person that you looked to for studying tornadoes, Dr. Fujita was it.
Shoot as much as you can from...
Dr. Fujita's team will fly over the paths of the tornadoes to photograph the patterns of debris left on the ground, which may depict a clear picture of the twister's strength and behavior. Then, they'll match this data to radar images taken during the outbreak. Fujita hopes to discover clues that will help meteorologists predict where and when tornadoes will strike in the future. In Tornado Alley, twisters are normally caused when humid winds from the Gulf of Mexico move north and collide with colder, drier winds from the west. As the warm wind rises, it converges with these colder winds, causing horizontal rotation. Heat from the ground produced by the sun makes the warm air rise even further. Finally, it pushes itself up through the colder layer, creating a funnel that spins upward as a tornado. These violent funnels can cause devastating damage and strike any U.S. state, but they predominantly hit Tornado Alley in the spring and summer. In 1974, meteorologists monitor Tornado Alley with radar. The images generated by this radar help them recognize early signs of storms that are likely to generate twisters. But the scans aren't sophisticated enough to predict the exact locations where the most dangerous tornadoes will form. If Fujita's plan works, it could help hundreds of people survive tornadoes in the future. But with a cleanup operation already underway, they have to work fast. The question is, where do they start?
We gathered up newspapers, we called National Weather Service offices and got reports. We put little dots on the map so we didn't have to just go randomly looking at every square mile of the whole state of Illinois and Indiana and Ohio and so forth.
The following morning, the team divides into groups. Greg and a colleague board a chartered plane.
We felt like detectives. We really called ourselves tornado detectives. We had to go and follow the little clues that got left behind by the tornado. You couldn't directly study the crime in progress. You had to look at the clues that were left after the fact.
Within 45 minutes, Greg Forbes is at the scene of the first tornado. There is chaos beneath him. But as patterns start to emerge, it becomes clear that Fujita's plan might work. America's heartland is devastated by the worst tornado outbreak in recorded history. Determined to find some good in the wake of this disaster, student Greg Forbes from the University of Chicago flies over the tornado's paths to photograph the debris. Louisville, Kentucky, and Xenio, Ohio are completely devastated. By photographing this destruction, Forbes can determine the precise direction, power, and speed of the tornadoes. Then he can compare these pictures to radar images taken during the tornado outbreak. This could reveal which cloud formations are associated with the most destructive tornadoes and help meteorologists predict where the most dangerous twisters will strike.
I knew that there was the potential that what I was studying there could help with future tornado episodes and perhaps save lives.
When Forbes returns to the University of Chicago, the photos from his aerial survey are shown to the team. Debris is scattered over large areas from the force of the tornado. But as Forbes examines the images in detail, he discovers a number of puzzling phenomena. It has long been reported that the destruction left by a tornado can sometimes leave houses completely untouched. This photo is evidence of this strange occurrence. The prevailing theory is that some tornadoes miss buildings because they occasionally lift into the air. But Fujita isn't convinced by this idea. He asks the team to study the photographs in greater detail and search for further explanation. Another bizarre anomaly is found in Monticello, Indiana. The Monticello tornado behaved normally for the first 13 miles. But then something extremely unusual happened. Just when it should have died out, it picked up speed and traveled for 121 miles, killing 19 people, including Karen Stott's friends who drowned in the Tippecanoe River. The aerial photographs raise other questions for Forbes and Fujita. Since the 1950s, the government has advised the public to open windows before tornadoes strike. It's believed that opening windows balances the pressure inside and outside the structure and prevents it from exploding.
Watch this demonstration. Low pressure in the vortex causes walls and roofs to explode outwards. This occurs because of higher pressure inside.
But nowhere in the aerial photographs can Forbes and Fujita see evidence of debris exploding in all directions. Then in Xenia, Fujita has a breakthrough. A 15-year-old boy named Bruce Boyd filmed the Xenia tornado for more than 2 minutes. Filmed tornado footage is extremely rare in 1974.
We didn't have video cameras at the time that are so pervasive today. We didn't have all sorts of movies of hundreds of tornadoes per year that are captured on film.
By studying the moving images of the twister, they use a process called photogrammetry to analyze the movement of debris caught in the funnel, which helps them assess speed, direction, and power. It's a technique that gets dramatic results. In 1965, Fujita used it on photographs of tornadoes taken during the Palm Sunday outbreak. His study helped develop the Fujita, or F-scale, which is still used around the world today. An F1 tornado causes minor damage. An F2 can roll a car. An F3 can overturn a train. The F4 is monstrous and can flatten well-constructed houses. Finally, the most feared and rarely sighted F5 can have wind speeds up to 318 miles an hour. The F5 is the most powerful wind known to man. Dr. Fujita and Greg Forbes returned to Chicago with Boyd's film of the Xenia tornado. When they analyze the footage, they find evidence of a phenomenon that Fujita has long suspected, but has never been able to prove. Some tornadoes actually have a number of smaller funnels, which dance around the parent as it plows its destructive path.
The Boyd movie is certainly very spectacular. It periodically has a couple of multiple funnels that are dancing around, pirouetting about each other in the midst of revolving about the parent tornado.
Bruce Boyd's film captures these multiple funnels in action. The investigation progresses in other areas too. After hours of painstaking analysis of the aerial photos, no evidence is found of buildings exploding in every direction as previously thought. But they discover that debris caught in the funnel of a tornado can act as high-velocity missiles and seriously damage structures. These missiles, combined with winds exceeding 200 miles an hour, explain why buildings are destroyed. They're actually blown over with massive force, although to a bystander, it looks like they're exploding.
Oh my God, I hope they're okay.
This is significant information for Forbes. The government's advice to open windows doesn't save buildings. It puts people's lives at risk because they should be finding shelter instead. This new information will help save many lives in the future. Then the team discovers a second piece of film capturing a tornado in action. In Parker, Indiana, news cameraman Wally Hubbard was caught in a hailstorm and forced to stop his car. Spotting a tornado, he instinctively reached for his news camera. Forbes and Fujita study debris captured in Hubbard's film. They take precise measurements of wreckage caught in the funnel using photogrammetry. Their analysis of the images confirms that wind speeds inside the Xenia tornado reached 300 miles an hour. Their research finally explains why some buildings remain untouched during a strike, but critically, they discover that multiple funnel tornadoes hold another deadly secret. The addition of the smaller funnels can make some tornadoes even more dangerous. They add another destructive layer of wind.
By revolving about the parent tornado and having its own circulation, that would add yet another layer of additional wind speeds.
This discovery helps scientists understand twisters, but it isn't the breakthrough that will help them better predict tornadoes in the future. To find the forecasting tools they need, they'll have to go back to the radar images recorded during the outbreak. Forbes searches the images for clues, and his attention is drawn to cloud patterns called hook echoes, named for their distinctive hook shape. Weather radar was first introduced across the U.S. in the 1940s. Since then, these hook-shaped cloud formations have often been observed during a tornado outbreak. But the hooks vary, and meteorologists are unable to pinpoint which ones create the most dangerous tornadoes. Forbes continues to look through the radar images to gather enough information to make a breakthrough.
We went and printed every image from those radar microfilms and then categorized what was the shape of the parent echo. Was it a well-defined hook echo with a little curly Q at the end, or was it some more kidney bean shape, or was it something else?
Sure enough, Forbes sees a connection. Each of the 6 F5 tornadoes formed during the outbreak was created from a hook echo, which lasted between 5 and 7 hours. Forbes and Fujita are one step closer to cracking the mysterious patterns of tornadoes. By looking for long-lasting hook echoes during an outbreak, meteorologists will now be able to predict with accuracy where and when the most lethal tornadoes will strike.
We'd never had anything like this before.
Dr. Fujita now turns to the final mystery of the April 3rd outbreak, the Monticello, Indiana tornado.
It was unusual in that it was very, very long tornado. It just kept going and going and going. I would never have predicted that that particular thunderstorm would have produced a 100-mile-plus tornado path.
Why did the Monticello twister travel so far? Forbes and Fujita studied the aerial photos and searched for clues to help explain why the tornado went more than 100 miles further than expected. It's Fujita who spots something out of the ordinary. Aside from the normal twisting marks left by a tornado, he finds evidence of a completely different type of ground damage.
There were some places in the damage pattern from the Super Outbreak that didn't quite fit the tornado mold.
Fujita proposes that this ground damage was caused by dramatic bursts of air dropping from directly above, a phenomenon he calls downdrafts. When warm air rises in a thunderstorm, it eventually cools and begins to fall back to Earth. Sometimes this cool air rushes back at great speed, descending rapidly down the trailing edge of a thunderstorm in a destructive burst. If a downdraft had combined with a tornado in Monticello, the tornado could have been infused with energy, allowing it to travel further. The photographic evidence of a downdraft in Monticello isn't enough to prove that they exist. But Forbes and Fujita's hard work produces a map of the entire tornado outbreak. Each black mark represents the path of a tornado in miles. They reveal that the total distance covered by all the twisters is 2,500 miles. Fujita's investigation into what becomes known as the Super Outbreak is a scientific milestone. It's the most comprehensive study of tornadoes ever undertaken and amasses a wealth of new data. It debunks the dangerous myth that opening windows keeps houses from exploding, and proves that there's no scientific evidence that tornadoes skip. It reveals that tornadoes sometimes form unpredictable multiple funnels. The investigation also proves that the longest-lasting hook echoes create the most dangerous twisters. This becomes a vital tool in the prediction of the most lethal tornadoes and gives meteorologists a much better chance of warning the public in the future.
On several levels, the Super Outbreak went a long way toward eventually reducing casualties from tornadoes.
Dr. Fujita publishes a report on his findings, which receives great acclaim from the scientific community. But he was never able to prove his radical downdraft theory or explain why the Monticello twister traveled for over 120 miles. Then, 1 year after the Super Outbreak, he receives an unexpected phone call. A plane carrying 124 people has crashed. The National Transportation Safety Board wants to know if freak weather conditions could have been responsible. And this seemingly unconnected tragedy could ultimately lead Fujita to solve the downdraft mystery once and for all. Dr. Fujita from the University of Chicago has gathered data from the worst tornado outbreak in U.S. history. But one puzzle remains. Why the tornado that hit Monticello, Indiana, traveled for 121 miles, more than 100 miles further than expected? A year after the Super Outbreak, Fujita is called to New York to help investigate the crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 66. As the passenger jet approached JFK's runway, it mysteriously slammed into the ground, killing 115 passengers and crew. Could the crash have been the result of freak weather conditions? Fujita analyzes the telemetry details stored in the black box of Flight 66. He then studies black box data from other planes flying that day and atmospheric readings taken on the ground. He builds a picture of what may have happened in the air before the plane crashed and is surprised by his findings. A series of small downdrafts, which he calls microbursts, interfered with a number of planes that day as they landed at JFK. It was these microbursts that literally pushed Flight 66 into the ground just short of the runway.
He quickly discovered that there were some fairly small diameter but very intense downdrafts that were occurring in a pulsing mode over the airport that allowed some of the airplanes to land without incident, others having great difficulty, and one crashing.
Other planes could be in danger, so Fujita publishes his findings. The aviation industry rapidly upgrades radar at airports across the U.S. in order to detect this atmospheric anomaly before it kills again. For Fujita, it's a double victory. His research proves that the ground damage seen in Monticello a year earlier, caused by dramatic bursts of air, can be attributed to a downdraft. It was this freak atmospheric anomaly which energized the Monticello tornado and set it on a deadly path for 121 miles with devastating consequences. This is the final piece of Fujita's puzzle. Finally, we can reveal the critical chain of events which plunged 13 states into a catastrophic clash with Mother Nature. April 3rd, 1974. Winds move inland from the Pacific Ocean and Gulf of Mexico, creating highly unstable atmospheric conditions across Tornado Alley. Forecasts suggest the U.S. is about to be hit by the worst tornado outbreak in a decade. But meteorologists don't know exactly where or when the most dangerous tornadoes will strike. They send out blanket warnings, but they're too late. By 3:30 p.m., a tornado touches down on the outskirts of Xenia, Ohio. Many people are taken by surprise and waste valuable time opening windows to keep their houses from exploding. Xenia is obliterated by high-velocity missiles and winds. Incredibly, some buildings survive the tornado's multiple funnels. At 4:47 p.m., a tornado touches down on the edge of Monticello, Indiana. The population is taken by surprise. 19 people are killed. Turbocharged by a downdraft, this tornado then travels across open country for another 106 miles. At 5 a.m. on April 4th, the outbreak finally ends, 16 hours after it began. Cities are reduced to rubble. 148 tornadoes caused $600 million worth of damage. More than 5,000 people are injured. 330 are dead. Dr. Ted Fujita died in 1998. Greg Forbes is employed by the Weather Channel and continues his work as a meteorologist. His ability to predict the weather today is greatly enhanced by modern technology. High-quality satellite images show developing weather in real time, and mobile Doppler radar probes deep inside tornadoes. A dedicated radio service broadcasts the latest severe weather information, and tornado sirens have been installed across America's heartland. Dr. Fujita's investigation was an early stepping stone towards science's understanding of tornadoes. To this day, his findings still play a part in saving lives around the world.